Hey guys, so it's Ken, and so I'm going to predict 5 things that I think are going to happen between now and the end of 2022, and maybe they'll kick into 2023. Stick around to the end so I can tell you what I'm doing and what I think you should do, because all of these things are going to create ripple effects and obviously disruption, but there's also going to be a lot of opportunity. As always, I'll provide the show notes for this video in the link below, and be sure to like, subscribe, and sign up for notifications so you will never miss our future videos or live streams. So I boiled it down to 5 predictions that I think are going to happen starting June of 2021 and are going to roll all the way through 2022 and maybe even beyond. So let's get right to it. So the very first one, forbearance, I believe is going to end in 2021. We all know that's been kicked down the road enough, but they're not going to kick it into 2022, I believe. And why do I think that? Because all of the COVID rates are going way down. Vaccinations are going up and people are returning to work. Things are starting to be way more comfortable and life is starting to get back to normal. Even TSA has come out and said that you might not have to wear a mask after September of 2021. So I don't see any reason why we're going to kick this forbearance into next year. However, the ripple effect will depend largely on how behind the homeowners are on their payments and whether the lender is willing to work with that particular homeowner. Either way, a lot of people are going to have to pay. The second thing, of course, is the eviction moratorium, and I also believe that that's going to end in 2021. We all know that's been kicked down the road. Now, this eviction moratorium is going to be somewhere between 10 and 15 million people. And the landlords are now going to have the opportunity to collect that rent if the renters can pay it. And you're going to see lots and lots of movement in the rental category when the eviction moratorium ends. Additionally, the courts are going to be flooded with evictions in every single state, and it's going to put a massive strain on our court system. Number 3. I believe that home prices are going to peak in 2022. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why. A lot of it has to do with the forbearance ending and that new inventory coming to the market, and affordability on the homes that people are living in today is really, really tough right now. Number 4, I believe that we're heading into a renter's nation and that the pandemic kicked it into gear. Later in the video, I'm going to show you the home ownership rates just like we saw in 2008 and how people are falling off the home ownership rates from a peak right now of 68%. The last thing I strongly believe is that we're going to have higher interest rates. Hopefully you've been paying attention to this. This is an important topic because both Janet Yellen, who is the head of the Treasury, and Jerome Powell, who is the head of the Fed, have both hinted that we might be seeing higher interest rates in the economy to tamper down inflation. So those are the 5 things that we're going to cover right now. Okay, item number 1, forbearance. So I believe that forbearance is going to end, and what we're going to see right now, 70% of the FHA, VA, USDA, Freddie Mac, and Fannie Mae loans are all in forbearance, as you know. And right now, we're seeing about 2+ million people that are going to have to deal with that. Not all of them are going to happen in 2021. Some are going to trickle into 2022. But here's the truth, guys. These are folks that have to pay, okay? One way or another, these people have to pay. And what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to show that they have new sources of income, they have a job, because these are loan modifications or these are refinances. And the way, of course, lenders lend money is based on people's ability to pay in the future. So this is going to go one of 2 ways. People are either going to stay in their homes and work it out with the lender if the lender allows it based on their financial condition, or 2, they're going to have to sell some of these homes or foreclose. And luckily, some of these home prices have gone up enough, or they might have enough money to pay back some of this money that's now in forbearance. They'll be able to use the proceeds from their house to pay that off. One small thing, I know there's been a lot of press about this, but the foreclosure activity continues to increased despite the government moratorium. So I know there's a lot of conflicting information on here. I really think you should dig harder into this because obviously this is a big, big issue and we have billions and billions of dollars of unpaid mortgages here that are going to trickle into the economy one way or another. The second big prediction is I believe that the eviction moratorium is going to end and we're going to have somewhere around 11 million renters that are going to be displaced. So in other words, when this ends, the landlords are now legally able to take back possession of their property through the proper eviction process. Millions and millions of people are going to be facing evictions as this moratorium ends and as the landlords try to take back their properties and obviously rent them to people that can pay so that they can pay their own bills. One more thing to consider here, these people, they're all going to be different. Every single state, every single city is going to be very, very, very different. Eviction rates will be higher in some states than others, obviously. For example, 1 in 4 renters are behind on their housing payments in Florida and South Carolina, compared with 6% in Maine and Kentucky, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. You go take a look at this. So as you can see, every city and every state's going to be a little bit different. So as these things start to roll out, you'll have both demand and supply issues as these evictions roll through the court system and as people move around. And by the way, that doesn't always mean that they're going to move locally. Okay, so here's one that everybody's going to be controversial on and they're going to attack. But the fact is, I really believe that home prices are going to peak in 2022. And here's a couple of the reasons why. As you take a look at this, right now, home ownership rates, they're down, guys. And so take a look at this. If you want to go look at the St. Louis Fed, I think this is fascinating. This is the home ownership rate for the United States as a whole. So this starts in 1970, 80, 90, 2000. Okay, you can see that we got really, really high up in 2005. That's actually what created the housing crash in 2007, 2008, 2009. As you started to see, it took its way down and then it kept going down, 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 down. This bodes very good for renters right here. That's what that does. When there's people falling out of houses, then obviously they're going into rentals generally. So the housing rate went down to almost 63% from about 69%. We're going to get back to that in a little bit. But that's a massive difference, guys. That's millions of people. Every 1% is millions of people. So from 69 to 63%. So right now we're looking at the same thing where it obviously peaked in 2020 during the pandemic, which is crazy. It got up to basically 68% home ownership rate. This here, that's a fall. Now let's take a look at this little area right here. Okay, so now we're just going to take a look at the very small area of 2018 to 2021, okay? So what we saw is in 2018, the home ownership rate was just under 65%. It went all the way up to 68%. Guys, this is like 3 million people basically went in to home ownership during this time. And what happens when it reverses is they go back into rentals, and that's where we're going to head in a minute. So as you can see, this all fell here, and here's where we are now. So the home ownership rate is down to about 65% from 68%. While that might not seem like a lot, guys, that's millions and millions of people that are coming out of home ownership into rentals. The second thing, interest rates, they're going up. Let me show you guys. It's all over the news if you haven't read this. The Treasury Secretary Yellen says that rates may have to rise somewhat to keep the economy from overheating. Things are overheating right now. Prices are going crazy, guys, and the Fed uses the interest rate as a barometer, as a gas pedal and a brake to be able to put the brakes on an economy. What that's going to do, though, is not good things because it's going to slow things down right now. And the last thing is construction costs. So those of you who have been under a rock, you know that construction costs are really, really high right now. That's creating affordability issues. As you guys can see, from construction costs, home builders and buyers face high prices due to construction costs that are going up. In fact, the National Association of Home Builders right here, check this out. They've added $35,872 for one house. And so what we're seeing is there's no way the builder absorbs that. There's no way the contractor absorbs that. These costs get passed right through to the homeowner, and it creates more and more affordability issues. And that's going to be bad because interest rates are already so low, and we can't really lower the mortgage payment much more than it really is. So the next prediction is a renter nation. Now, nobody's really talking about this, but guys, this happened in 2008. I went through it personally. When homeownership got up to 69% and went all the way down to 62%, it put massive pressure on rentals. That's what spurred all of this investor housing stuff, because without renters, you don't have investor housing. So this is about ready to happen again. Even though prices are crazy right now because of all this pent-up supply, I'm telling you right now, we're heading into a renter nation, and here's a great study for you to look at. This great report by Freddie Mac, which you guys, hopefully you know who Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae is. One of the most important challenges of our industry will face the significant shortage of starter homes. And the reason, guys, is because what we already talked about with these construction costs. Construction costs are crazy. Take a look at this. This is out of that report, and this is really what I want you to take a look at. Before the COVID pandemic and the current recession, the housing market was facing a substantial supply shortage right here. And that deficit has grown. In 2018, they estimated there was a housing supply shortage of 2.5 million units already in 2018 before the pandemic, meaning that the U.S. economy was about 2.5 million below what was needed to match the long-term demand. Using the same methodology, which is really important, the government rarely does this, we estimate that the housing shortage increased to 3.8 million units by the end of 2020. That's not good. That means it's going the other way. That means that we actually are going to have a supply issue. There's not going to be enough supply, and demand's going to be there, and it's going to drive all these rents up, I believe. So as you guys can see, typically in a recession, housing demand declines typically. That does not appear to be the case here because of multiple things as a result of COVID, for people not putting their houses on the market, people not being able to trade up because now they're trading into something that's lesser, and also because of the forbearance and all these eviction issues, we're not going to have a decline in housing demand. So for more of this on the Freddie Mac, you can go on their website and look at the entire report, and you can follow this for yourself. The next thing that's going to happen is the millennials. They were born between 1981 and 1994, as you can see here. What's crazy is that these millennials that everybody's been picking on are now turning 30 at the rate of 4.8 million a year. So that's a lot of folks turning 30. And what's happening is they're going to come into this housing market too. And what they're going to experience, guys, is not being able to afford a home because of these rising prices. So we're going to have some affordability issues, and that's going to shove people into rental housing. The cool part about it, as a landlord, and hopefully you guys are investors and landlords too, you're going to find that these folks, they have cash, they have jobs, they have careers, they've now been in the workforce for a while. They're actually going to be forced, which is not necessarily good, into rental housing until they can afford something. The next thing, which is rather obvious, is what we already saw when I showed you earlier, is how rental rates zoomed from about 2010 till about 2019. Was rental rates are definitely going to go up over the next 10 years. And the reason, of course, guys, all boils down to supply. As a landlord or a developer, we are definitely not going to see the supply of rental housing to meet this demand. And what will happen is we will definitely see individual rental increases in all these individual markets based, of course, on the supply and demand for that individual market. So pick your markets selectively. So the last thing, which hopefully you guys are watching the news, higher interest rates are definitely going to be a thing as the Federal Reserve starts to put a governor on this economy. As you can see, a lot of these investors are already backing off with the view that the Federal Reserve can raise rates in 2022. So this is a thing. Janet Yellen came out recently and said that in her last statement, it didn't mean that they were going to raise rates, but you can see that she hinted it in her last statement. So why do I think there'll be higher interest rates? Because the Federal Reserve has a policy that if inflation's very, very high, that they actually raise rates to try to maintain inflation to a reasonable level. What that's going to do, unfortunately, is it's gonna create affordability issues in the form of rent. It's gonna create affordability issues in the form of mortgages and car payments and all those kinds of things, because people finance things, and as those rates go up, their payments go up. And if they're not having that kind of wage growth, then it puts a squeeze primarily on that middle class and the poor. Then we're going to have this affordability squeeze. And I think this is going to be your biggest issue for the next 10 years. The last thing, and I keep pounding away on you guys, is a fixed versus a variable loan. If the Federal Reserve is saying that they're going to increase rates, gosh, guys, fix the rate, fix the rate, fix the rate. You want less than a 3% rate fixed? You want to know that your rate's going to be 2.8 or 2.5% in 10 years from now when they're increasing rates? You don't ever want to get rid of that loan. Make sure you fix this rate. So if you guys like what you've seen so far, hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, because now we're going to talk about the opportunities and the things that you can do on the 5 predictions that I just went over. Okay, so now where are the opportunities with all this crazy stuff going on? Forbearance ending, evictions ending, houses peaking, when do I buy, where are rents going, all that kind of stuff. Well, I just went over all that. Those are things, guys, that are definitely going to happen. We just don't know exactly when, because of course the government can throw more money at this thing. They can kick the can down the road even more. There are basically 4 opportunities that you can do just like I'm doing. I'm doing these right now. The first one is the cost to build versus the cost to buy. So what do I mean by that? So let me give you an example. Right now we're in the process of buying a property in Katy, Texas. And in Katy, Texas, we're buying an entire apartment complex, actually 2 of them, for 648 units, and we're paying about $73 million for both projects. And that's under $130,000 a unit, roughly in there, which equates to about $120 to $130 a foot. So I'm buying a property at well below what it would cost to build. If I was to build a property right next door to that property, it would be well over $200 a foot. So just to buy the property, I'm buying it, call it a $60,000 to $70,000 per unit discount than it would be if I was to build. And if the cost to build is significantly more than the cost to buy, then you might want to buy instead of build. And that's all I'm saying. In Phoenix, that exact same property that we're buying in Katy, Texas, would cost a little over $200,000 a unit. And so of course we went down to Katy, Texas, because what's the other factor? The rent. Okay, the rents are not that much difference because the property in Katy is right across the street from the Texas Medical Center. So we're buying at $130,000 a unit, and our average rents are about $1,200 or $1,300 a month. That math works all day long. But in Phoenix, that exact same apartment building would be well over $200,000 to buy it, and the rents would not be that much difference. So the math doesn't make sense to buy in Phoenix right now, and it makes all the sense to buy in Katy, Texas. And that's what I mean by the cost to build versus the cost to buy. The second one is the supply and demand for the rental rates, okay? So again, guys, it's just math. You want to take a look at what's the supply, where are people going? So what's the occupancy? If occupancy is really high in an area or about ready to be high because an area is growing, then that means that your rental demand is going to be there, and you're going to see this nice little rent growth like we just saw from Austin, Texas, let's say, over the last 10 years, which is an area that we invest in right now. The third one is obvious, okay? Follow the people. So people, what they do is they vote with their pocketbook and their feet. The Ryder trucks, the U-Hauls, the Atlas van lines. We've talked all about this. Go where the people are going, guys. Florida, Texas, Arizona, those aren't the only 3, but those are really good markets right now because it's very, very hard to buy properties in many, many areas because people are moving there right now. And you're going to see these rental rates go as well because people are buying them as investments and renting them for the long term. And the last thing, guys, as we've talked about time and time and time and time again, please do not buy things for capital gains, which means I'm going to buy a house for $300 and flip it at $400. This is not the time, guys. You want to make it cash flow. You want to use the rental rates. You want to use the rental income, and you want to use the strong renters nation that's coming. So whatever you buy over the long term is going to put cash in your pocket, and you're building passive income primarily tax-free for the rest of your life so you can get financially free. So again, guys, thanks for watching the 5 predictions. Invest well.